You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks to all those out there making us their first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, back with a reaction episode for your Sunday or whenever you may be taking this in, as we are digesting a Big 12 win for the good guys. The Red Raiders take down Houston from Jones Stadium 49-28. And a whole lot of good stuff to get into today and into the week, Chris. Everything feels better, obviously, when you're a winner. And we'll get to some things you did defensively to make you a winner. We'll get to some things you did special teams-wise to make you a winner. And, of course, as you see there on the screen, the offensive identity for the day, in large part, made you a winner, man. There was a lot of interesting things happening. And, thankfully, at the end of the day, successful things happening.
Complimentary football for most of it. Yeah, I know. That's right. It's because I think what we're seeing is the pieces are kind of changing week to week because of injuries, and this is just kind of the way the sport goes. But we've talked about, I'm tired of talking about, like, hey, not a dude. You don't have this team is what we're seeing is a collection of parts, man. And finally all the parts kind of played well together for the most part. I think your defense wasn't, and Joey said that to me at halftime, walking off the field. He's like, I mean, defense, this isn't what we've hoped for, what we have seen. We've got to settle down. We got to tackle better because Houston just kind of did whatever they wanted on offense in that first half. And Donovan Smith had a game in that first half in the Houston offense. They just never were rattled. They just kind of moved down the field. And other than that, though, I think other than the first half on defense, I think other than that, all three other phases played really well together. And we'd be remiss if we didn't lead this thing off by, I don't know what the analytics are, man. I don't know what the numbers would tell you, but if you score a special teams touchdown in a game, boy, it slants in your favor. You score two. I mean, I'd be willing to tell you, I bet that's in the 80s or 90% range on two special teams touchdowns equaling a win for your team. But maybe, combine that with scoring on defense. But man, the kickoff return by Dre McCray. I feel like this game in general was a game that, because people have been looking for Loic Fouonji. He's been on a milk carton. Where are you, man? We're searching for you. He blocks a punt, scores a touchdown. Baron Morton throws it up to him in a back shoulder play, scores a touchdown. Dre McCray, we've talked about a lot, hadn't done a whole lot. Well, changed that. And then my man Cameron Valdez finally kind of enters the chat, as they say. And so that was fun to watch some of these other pieces that you knew were there. We had spent a lot of time on these shows talking about some of these guys, and it just kind of blows up on Houston. And you were outgained in this game. I think there's plenty to have issue with the tackling and, like I said, the first half on defense. But you were just super efficient. No turnovers, almost no penalties to speak of. Clean football, what the head coach has been asking for, or eliminating bad football. And yeah, you ran the ball a lot, and I think you did that because it's working. And two, your quarterback hadn't thrown a pass all week. He had not thrown until the game started at 2:30 on a Saturday. I'd be willing to bet you that the first real throws he'd taken were at about 135, 140-ish of the week. And that'll make you pucker up a little bit if you're the head coach, the OC, the whoever. But I think they did well, and they ran it effectively, and maybe we see more of that. Hopefully so.
It was a lot of fun to watch, man. I thought you used your parts in a complimentary way. Mm-hmm. And, we'll get to the defensive turnaround in just a second. I'm curious what you saw down there as far as what was so different in the second half. And part of what I think you have to credit in the first half was I felt like you got one of Donovan Smith's better games individually that I've seen him play, really. He didn't make many mistakes. Obviously, the turnover column was clean. He was breaking some tackles. There was a huge on the first drive, I think, like a 3rd and 2, 3rd and 4. Had him stop behind the line. He gets out of it, and then a few minutes later, they're in the end zone. But I would credit Donovan. I thought he actually played one of the better games I've seen him play. I hadn't seen him every time he's taken the field, but I thought you actually got a good version of Donovan Smith if you're a Cougars fan, and Texas Tech overcame that. But yeah, the offensive identity, Chris, finally looked like to me what I want to see and have wanted to see for actually several years now, going back to like the Alan Bowman era, when you've really been kind of hit or miss, unreliable at quarterback. Your offensive line hasn't been great. It's been probably below average in a lot of those years. And the wide receivers, aside from a couple of exceptions, have not been breakaway kind of guys. And so you've thought about, okay, what does black and blue look like when your best offensive players are SaRodorick Thompson and Taj Brooks a season ago? Fast forward to now. Names have kind of changed, but the makeup is sort of still the same. And I don't know if we kind of see the passing game unhitched as the weeks go by with Baron Morton, maybe feeling better, maybe a little bit more comfortable. I don't know, but it sure seemed like what they did yesterday could work. And that complementary word, I think, really has to be emphasized, because via what you were able to do offensively and how methodically you did it, I do also think eventually it was helping your defense out. But the special teams impact, man, Bill Snyder would love this game. I mean, it was like a K-State vibe, right? And I don't care at the end of the day that you were outgained statistically, because you were short, 2 possessions, I guess, if you want to count it that way, offensively. I don't care. You're not here for a total yards contest. You're here for a points contest. And I just love the pieces coming together like that, man. And I hope that offensive identity will stick around for a while, because it was really fun to watch. And I think it helped your team broadly as it impacted defense, and then obviously special teams as well.
Yeah, I think offensive line play in the last several years has been not as good as you needed it to be. And I think that this group, and again, I think this group has taken some criticism early on. I think they're getting better. I think you're starting to figure out what they're good at. They've now got some games under their belt together. I think it's still not where you necessarily need it to be or want it to be, but I think that you kind of starting to figure out what they're good at. I loved some of the motions with the tight ends,
yep,
and getting them kind of some different looks in the blocking game. And again, you didn't finish this game with Mason Tharp, and I think Baylor Cupp is also playing through an injury, a shoulder issue, which happened in the West Virginia game. So you don't have necessarily all your pieces healthy that help this aspect of your game. But I thought, man, anytime you rush for 240 yards, basically is what it was, and you had two guys. How about this? You had 2 guys over 100 yards in a conference game for the first time since 1998. And those guys were named. Wow. You ready for this? Now, this is a bit before your time. Now, I don't know if you're going.
Can I make one guess?
Okay.
Is there a Ricky Williams involved, or was that even prior to the other?
That you nailed it, little Ricky. But the other one you will not have.
I don't know the other.
It was the quarterback at the time, Rob Peters.
Hot Rob.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that's a bit of a
that's wild
unicorn scenario that we just saw.
And there was a span where you had a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher, DeAndre Washington, about a decade after that, but you still didn't do it with 2 century guys in a conference game.
Funny you mentioned DeAndre Washington. Here's the next one. Taj went over 100 yards for the 3rd game in a row for the first time since 2015, which was DeAndre Washington. So very good segue there, Mr. Cowan. But yeah, the one thing that Cameron can do is carry the football. And we have to understand here, Taj needs help. Yeah. He can't be out there for all these plays. People want him to carry it more. People want him to all that. If you watch the collisions he's taking and picking up the blitzes and the chip blocks and all that, it's a lot of wear and tear. It just is, and it accumulates. And
some of the blows he's delivering.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think we touched on that. They were like going to force themselves to take him out of the game some, just because he just can't you're trying to protect the kid, one, because, what is he going to look like in late October, November if this continues? It's not necessarily fair to him. As hard as it is for you as a coach to go, come stand over here, you just almost have to do it. And I think, too, Taj has got a future in this game, man. You don't want to burn him up and not let him have a chance at the next level and all that. So that's why it's imperative that, like, the Cameron Valdez's and the Nehemiah Martinez's, or, whether it's Bryson Donnell or whoever it is, man, they've got to continue to step up. The problem with almost all of those guys is they don't play. None of them are yet well-rounded. They're all good carrying it. We've seen some of that, but it's the other stuff that they've got to be better with. And hopefully Cameron can build on his carries and continue to do the other stuff better, so he doesn't get your quarterback killed, or he doesn't go the wrong way, or doesn't drop it out of the backfield, whatever. But either way, it looked good. I thought you saw what we kind of have been looking for in the Cameron Valdez show a little bit, because it is different. It's a different style. He's not necessarily going to just run away from people, but he gets upfield. He's a north-south guy, and he doesn't dance around and run through people like Taj does. It's a bit of a different look, but he does have some speed. It's just not, I guess, what they would term long speed and all that stuff. But, man, sign me up for more Cameron if you can get that going. But, yeah, I'm all about the run game.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun to watch, and I hope that the clock on Taj time stays there. Forget daylight savings or any other switches. Taj time all the time. Speaking offensively, Chris, one of your keys, well, we both, I think, echoed this in the last couple of weeks, and we've already touched on a couple of your keys that we kicked out there on Twitter at Locked On Tech, if you're not following us so far, or on X, whatever. Chris mentioned keep the crowd engaged early, because the natives could have been restless, and they were a little. I mean, we had a tough start kind of overall, but you had a huge play, and you mentioned that big plays or special teams impact. We got some of that. You talked about, hey, run the ball with Taj Brooks, but also find him some help for the reasons that you were just describing. And clearly we saw that happen. And, man, we've been sticking on third down as a key, of course, as it hasn't been that great. And then it really fell off a cliff against West Virginia, where you were 2 for 18. So you just kind of roll out of bed thinking, surely we can be better than 2 for 18. And you were 6 for 11. But here is how that works, Chris. What you really were able to do is put yourself in some better positions on third down as far as the average yardage needed to convert that into a first. Now, every first down, you were gaining over 5 yards on average, 5.3. So you like that number. The average distance to go on third down, 5.7. And that is almost slicing in half where you have been this season against Wyoming, Oregon, West Virginia. 7.9, 8.2, 7.4, something like that, I think, is the way you went in those 3 games. You set yourself up a little bit better, and wouldn't you know it, and what you would consider more so third and shorts, 1 to 5 yards, 1 to 4 yards, that's where you made most of your hay. You converted 4 of those. Anything beyond that, you actually did not convert. But we've got to tip the cap to a much, much better day on third down after just a nightmare day in Morgantown.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that about West Virginia, Wyoming, and then obviously Oregon. Your 3 losses, because I think they're combined. I want to say this is like 12-1. Those 3
got
teams.
1 loss in there, yeah.
Yeah, which is the Wyoming loss was in Austin on a Saturday night against the 3rd or 4th ranked team in the country right now. Yeah. So it doesn't make you feel any better, but I guess maybe you can kind of, understand it a bit. But yeah, the third down, I think, being better early on in series and on downs, I think helps you manage that a bit better. I think that 6 of 11 is still not necessarily want it to be. You want to end up being like, 8 of 11. I think you look at it and go, but you were good enough early on. I think you were your first 4 for 4, things like that. I think that, maybe some of those third downs later in the game you weren't, but the game was, you had some multi-score lead, I think, at that point. The third down part that makes me nervous is the way that the offense managed it. Was a bit better and everything. Was the defense at one point? I think Houston was at one point 9 of 11 on third downs. I think they finished up, I don't know, it was like 11 of 16 or something. Some late stops and things like that. But yeah, it was the defense that just couldn't get off the field. And I think, Houston just kind of converted those. But yeah, third down is going to continue to be a storyline on both sides of the ball until it's not. But I think, you nailed it, being better on first and second down certainly helps. And I thought Barron was very, he was good yesterday. He was efficient, and he wasn't, because I think if you heard Zach and Joey on this week about his play in West Virginia, you kept hearing them basically both saying probably trying to do too much. And I think this was a game where he wasn't trying to do too much. He just kind of, he's throwing a block near the goal line when he needed to. He never puts you in harm's way.
That was a little scary, by the way.
Yeah, I know, but that's the competitor. That's what he's
can't take that away from
Tyler and Barron. That's just kind of the way they play it. Donovan did it last year too. But he never risked a turnover. I thought, I don't know how many of these are checks or anything like that. I have no way of knowing that, getting in and out of plays and things like that. But I thought the game was played well. It was very efficient, and I thought he gave his guys a chance to make plays on the football, and avoided turnovers. And he got out of the pocket when he needed to. He didn't just take off and go when he was hearing footsteps that weren't there or anything like that. But I was pleased. But I think because this team ultimately is going to go how their quarterbacks play ultimately. Because I mentioned this. everybody's high on the Pac-12 right now as a league, and they're maybe one of the best league. But look at the QB play in that league. Penix Jr., Shedeur Sanders, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams. There's a long list of dudes at that position. Why is the Big 12 kind of all over the place? Because it's a league right now where there's not a lot of just solid stud quarterback type guys, some injuries and all that. And then coming into that game in Austin yesterday, it was Quinn Ewers and Jalen Daniels. And Quinn Ewers hadn't played great at times, but he played great at Tuscaloosa. And then you look up and Jalen Daniels can't play in that game. But that's how this season's going to go for the Red Raiders. If you can just be efficient, consistent, and a plus at times when it's needed at the QB position, I think you're going to like the results. So I was pleased with that. But yeah, third down notwithstanding, man, I think most of it was pretty good.
Before we get out of here, we've got to discuss the final phase for the Red Raiders defensively, because the first half was something to forget and seemingly an anomaly for the most part based on what we had seen prior to that this season, Chris. But then you get to the second half, you shut out Houston on the scoreboard, only 124 total yards, 3.1 average carry rushing-wise on 17 attempts. And you were much, much better on third down. Houston was 6 for 7 in the first half on third down. They were only 3 for 8 in the final two quarters. Did they figure something out? Something just settle in? How did that come to be from your perspective? Such a dramatic change.
Yeah, they tweaked a few things, but the funny thing is a lot is usually made of halftime adjustments, and Joey will tell you we don't that's. We adjust in the second quarter and the fourth quarter. I mean, you adjust right there. You can't wait till halftime. If you see something, you adjust. But I think that they settled down a bit. They pressured quite a bit in the first half. They pressured quite a bit in the second half. But I think Joey, would tell you we there was a few more games we were playing with the defensive line up front. Is kind of what he said. With some twists and stunts and things like that. They did maybe slant to playing a bit more coverage in the second half and not pressure quite as much, trying to and Donovan you forced a fumble, they fell on it, you didn't get that one, and then he tried to throw an interception to Bryce Ramirez, and that's a drop, could have been a pick six there, because that was kind of the Donovan that you'd seen some around here on a bit where he could look really good and then he just throw it to the other team a bit. But I thought Donovan played a really, really well played game. I think the blame game in Houston, I can't imagine if they're talking about that game that they point many fingers at Donovan Smith and his quarterback play. And you're right. He statistically plays an unbelievable game, but you were able to kind of shut him out in the second half and not allow any points being scored. And your defense finally, and not having Rabbit was a problem. Left early in the second quarter, and then Chapman Lewis is out there. You just got a lot of true freshmen out there. Spencer, Dingle, Jordan, on and on it went. And that's going to pay some dividends for you at some point. But there was a play that I think it was one of those plays over the middle of the field that went for a long touchdown pass, and Chapman Lewis they were playing a one high safety look, and Chapman Lewis just he got turned around a bit and lost the receiver, and it's just off to the races, and that's where you miss, Rabbit right there. But again, it didn't cost you, thankfully. It was just because I tell you who loved that game is if you were not a fan of Houston or Texas Tech and you're just sitting in to watch it had to be wildly entertaining. And I tell you who else loved that game is if you were in Vegas and you'd bet the over because it was defense optional there for a while. I mean, nearly 70 points scored in the first half of that one. Yeah, just wild, man. But yeah,
it's such a dramatic swing. It's just kind of wild to think about because you're talking 8.9 yards per play for Houston in the first 2 quarters. That number was 3.6 in the final 2 quarters. And if they ain't true freshmen, they're redshirt freshmen, like your leading tackler, Ben Roberts, who I thought also had another outstanding effort. But you figured out a way to get it done eventually, and you provide 21 points worth of separation when I think you wound up kicking off as about an 8.5 point favorite. So happy with all of the above, and still a lot to discuss with you as we roll into the week. Of course, Joey McGuire will be visiting with the media to kick off things on Monday, and we got plenty to dive into as we get ready for the Baylor Bears, who well, I still don't know what they did exactly in Orlando, but they came away a winner in one of the wildest games anywhere this weekend. So looking forward to making a trip down to the Baño on the Brazos. But we'll continue to reflect on this one for a few days first, Chris. Feels good to win, and we're in a new month with the win and a bit of a conference monkey off your back, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
Much needed, man. Much needed for all involved, including you and I.
That's right.
I mean, it's just the way it goes, man. I mean, winning's better than losing. That's the first thing I said to Joey after the game, man. I was like, winning's better than losing. He's like, boy, we needed that. It just changes the entire dynamic. You're still doing the same things. It's not like you had wholesale changes. You're trying to put the best team out there on a week-to-week basis with, because, I mean, no Pierre, which nobody knew about, no Jordan Brown, which nobody knew about. Thankfully, those guys. And so it's like, okay, Coy Aiken inserted, Mike Dingle inserted, and you're just kind of – then all of a sudden, middle of the game, Chapman Lewis inserted. This is the sport. Jaden York playing primary snaps now because Tharp didn't finish that game. This is just the way Baron Morton in there doesn't take a snap all week as far as or throws. And, but this is, I mean, nobody feels sorry for you, man. But, yeah, you got it done, and you salute and move on.
That's right. Next man up, or in our case, next men up, because it has been plural this season, no doubt about it. Chris, thanks for the time as always, man. I'll be back on the other side to kick off the week tomorrow. Looking forward to it and appreciate the insight, man. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. We'll do it again. Keep hope alive, people. Now you have some, maybe to keep hope alive there. There you go.
The balloon is inflated once again,
That's
at
right.
least partially. The best 2 and 3 team in the country, probably, at least that I can see.
A lot of work left to do.
All right. Hope you'll join us tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.